All right, you guys, hello and welcome back to another episode of Defy the Odds. I'm so excited that you're here. This is a very special episode in that it's marking the start of a new chapter. I have been doing a lot of reflection behind the scenes about what I want this podcast to be and how I want to show up for it every single week and what I want to be sharing with you and my intention for what you're getting out of this and how you're feeling when you're listening and what you're walking away with. And I feel like there's a shift happening here. And my cat is currently climbing through my books on my bookshelf right now. I also, this is a side note, completely off topic, but I was recording some Instagram stories earlier and I was maybe 30 seconds into the story and I hear my cat running in the background because I have hardwood floors and so I can hear her claws on the hardwood. And all of a sudden she slides and bangs into this metal plant pot and it falls over, crashes to the ground, scares the bejesus out of me. And I got it all on video and it was quite hilarious. But I did not share that on Instagram. I decided to re-record. Anyway, so for this podcast, what I really want to do, like where I'm feeling pulled and called, and what feels like the best direction for me to continue doing this is to be sharing more of my lived experiences with you, to be sharing more of the behind the scenes, to really step into my sixth line of my profile. I'm a 6'2" splenic projector. So bringing more of that role model energy, doing more storytelling, and really taking you behind the scenes of what I am learning in real time and what I'm experiencing so that you can learn through my own lived experiences. So, we're going to start that off in this episode, and I'm going to be talking about my recent program or course that I created called Over It, how I came up with the idea for this course, what was really the intention behind it, and also going into some of the mistakes that I've made along the way and how I was actually misaligned with my human design and how I recognize that and the changes that I made because of that. And also why I have decided to pause the launch of this course and all of the fears that came up as I was making that decision and how I led myself through that. So we have a lot to cover. So let's just dive in. So a few weeks ago, actually it was over like maybe a month ago now, I was doing a lot of reflection around my business and what I really wanted to be talking about because for the longest time I was talking about purely human design in my business. And then about 8 months ago, I started shifting and really heavily at the beginning of this year, I shifted into more strategy talk and sharing more about who your ideal client is and your most empowered client and how to refine your messaging and making sure that your messaging is speaking to your ideal client and how to fill your high ticket offers and this really simplified strategy that you could be using to grow your business to those 10, 20K months on repeat. And so I was very heavily in the strategy talk for a while. And I love that this was my journey, right? I'm not saying that anything was wrong with this because it was what I needed at the time. And it's where I was at the time. And it's what I was embodying at the time. And that's really how I've built this whole business. It's like, what have I embodied and what do I then want to share with my audience and my clients through that embodiment? And it was probably about a month ago, and I was like, you know what? Talking about strategy this heavily is starting to feel a little bit heavy. It's starting to feel a little bit boring. And I was sitting down to create content every day, and I was like, okay, what do I say today? And I was having to like rack my brain to come up with ideas. And anytime that's happening, I know that I'm not in my flow. I know that I am disconnected from God, source, universe. I know that I'm not sharing and speaking from my truth or my lived experience, because if you're speaking and sharing through your own lived experience and what you're currently embodying, then the message just flows out of you, right? There's nothing you have to think about because there's so much to talk about because you're living it. I wrote a post about this a few days ago. It's on my feed. I think it's called like when you don't know what to post today, or are you not sure what to post, something like that. And the whole idea behind that was like, if you are living your life and you're on this constant evolution and you're always growing and you're always stretching yourself and you're always helping your clients, you always have something to say, right? Because you are in your work. And I was not feeling that a month ago. I was feeling like everything felt really clunky and everything felt like I was creating really great content, but in order to create it, I had to sit down for hours at a time, and I would start a post and I would get a few like slides into the content, and then I'd be like, okay, I need to pause because I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I'm not sure what the point of this is. Like, how is this helpful? And it was just so much more complicated than it needed to be. So as I was sitting with myself and I was like, okay, Ashley, like, what do you actually want to be saying to your people? What do you actually want to be talking about? If it's not this strategy piece anymore, like if you could talk about anything, what would you want to talk about? If you could teach on anything, what would you want to teach about? Imagine your perfect dream client, right? The person you're most excited to work with. What do you want to talk to them about? And it was so clear to me that what I actually wanted to be talking about was mindset and energetics. This is my favorite topic. It is how I changed my life. It's how I went from at the beginning of 2020 to making like $0 in my business to at the end of 2020 having my first 10K month, right? It's how I got the courage to actually start this business in the first place. It's how I stepped into the identity of the person who could have a six-figure business when a couple years ago it was making $13 an hour, right? It was all through this energetic and mindset work, and I believe in it so strongly. And that is what I actually wanted to be talking about. And so when I had this realization, I was like, okay, like let's just create a course on this. And I was very intentional in that I wanted to create a course. I didn't necessarily want this to be like a live group coaching program, even though I love those. And even though I will continue to run those in my business for at least the foreseeable future, I wanted this to be a course that I created live and ran it live one time with the people who signed up. And then it was pre-recorded. So people who bought it in the future would get the recordings and it would be a self-paced course. And then as I continued to grow and learn, if I felt like there was more I needed to add to the course, I could add to it. But I wanted this to be one of the core offers that I have within my business, right? I'm projecting out into the future. Where do I see my business? How is it built? What am I offering? And this course was going to be one of those primary offers that I had. And so that all felt really, really good to me, right? And so I've been doing this work for a while. I've been creating courses and content for the past like 12 years. So it was very simple for me to be like, okay, here's the outline. This is going to be a 5-week course. And I know exactly what I want to say in each module. And I created the sales page and like all of that. Honestly, it took me like 3 days. It wasn't a lot of work. I did it over a weekend and I put it out into the world. And I was so excited. My energy was fully behind it. And I started talking about it and creating content around it. And over the first couple of weeks, I realized something. I realized that my audience was not warmed up to this idea. My audience was kind of like, whoa, what are you talking about, Ashley? Right? Like for the past 6 months, you've been talking all about strategy and messaging and ideal clients and high ticket offers. And then before that, you were only talking about human design. So where is this mindset and energetic stuff coming in? Right. And so all of this content that I was creating about this course was falling flat. There wasn't a lead up period. There wasn't a warm up period. There started to feel like because my audience wasn't warmed up on this particular topic, I started to feel a lot of pressure behind the launch. And I started to feel and all of this was unconscious, but I started to feel like I had to prove to people that I knew what I was talking about. And I had to prove that this was an important thing for them. And I had to somewhat like convince them that this was the piece that they needed in their business. And so after a couple of weeks, I was like, oh, wait, this does not feel good. I don't like who I am being as I'm selling this. And when I have that feeling, I can notice it in my body. And so I paused for a second and I checked in with myself through some journaling, and I realized two things. One, I didn't really allow this idea to incubate, right? And if we want to bring human design into the conversation, I have an undefined head center, and our head center is our center of inspiration. It's where we get our ideas. And with an undefined head, you need outside inspiration, right? You can't like stare at a blank screen and be inspired and have ideas. So you need to look at what other people are doing. You need to listen to podcasts. You need to read books, right? You need to soak it up from the outside world. And I think that's a piece of what happened is I was seeing all of these people, all of these brilliant coaches and entrepreneurs putting their offers out into the world and selling them and seeing how they were doing it. And I also have an undefined root center. And our root center is our center of pressure, like this pressure to do something, this pressure to take action. And my root center took on this energy and spurred me into action too quickly, right? I got this inspired idea to create this course and I was able to put it together really quickly. And my undefined root spurred me to begin selling it, to put it out into the world super, super quickly before I had this incubation period, before I allowed this idea. And it's so funny because I tell this to my clients and everyone I do a chart reading with, that if you have an undefined head, you need to allow the idea to simmer. You need to allow the inspiration to kind of like filter through. I think of it almost like, you know, that game Plinko from The Price is Right, where you drop the puck and it goes through all of these like prongs and it finds its way down to the bottom. That's kind of what happens when you get an idea with an open head center. And I didn't allow that to happen. But here's the tricky piece. I am splenic authority and I get splenic hits. And I know what a splenic hit feels like in my body. I know when something clicks. One of the biggest ones in my life is when I decided to move to Chicago, and someone said to me, "What about Chicago?" And I was like, boom, that's it. Yes. How did I not think of it? That's the city I'm supposed to be in. And literally within a month, I had moved across the country and was living in Chicago, right? So things can happen quickly. I'm not saying that moving fast is always out of alignment, because in certain situations, it has been key to my alignment and to my progression in my life. And I think that's why I've been able to take such massive action so quickly. So these splenic hits do come to me, and they come to me spontaneously. And the key thing here is that it's my job to learn to differentiate between when I'm having a splenic hit and when I have an inspired idea that I've taken on from someone else through my open head center, and when my open root center is pressuring me to act too quickly. This is the process of deconditioning, and this is the process of aligning with our design. And this is why it's not just learning the information, because I've known for 5 years that I have an undefined head, an open root center, and a splenic authority. Like I know that, and I know what that means. And still, I have experiences regularly where I'm like, oh, wait, I thought this was a splenic hit. And I actually do think the idea for this course and how it's going to fit into my product suite and be a key component of my business moving forward was a splenic hit. I do believe that 100%. But I think the way that I put it out into the world was based off of conditioning from my head and my root centers. So hopefully there are some nuggets in there for you, because when I realized that, it kind of blew my own mind. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, I need to pause this launch. Well, actually, what happened was in my journal, I wrote down, what's my next move? What do I need to do about this? Do I just recognize this within myself and say, okay, I was acting out of alignment, but because the launch has already started, I'm going to continue going and follow through with it? Because again, human design, I have a defined heart. And when I commit to something, it's very easy for me to stay committed and go all in. I do what I say I'm going to do. I follow through on things. I'm not a quitter. And so, what do I do in this situation where I'm in the middle of a launch and I realize that it's misaligned? I don't believe there's a right or wrong answer. I could have kept going with the launch fully. I could have just shifted my energy behind it and continued to launch it and sell it, and it could have been beautiful and perfect. I also could have completely scrapped the launch and been like, oh, okay, well, this all was born out of conditioning, so we're scrapping that and another idea will come. And what I chose was the middle road, to pause, just to pause. And this is currently where I'm at, and I don't know how long the pause will last. But at this point, I do know that I want to run this course. And I do believe that this course is going to be a core offering in my business. And I do believe that the content of this course is so valuable and can change so many lives. And I feel like launching it with where I'm currently at is not the right move. I believe the right move is for me to integrate and embody the content of this course on a deeper level, so that when I feel like it is time to launch it again, I have more stories to share. I have more embodiment to share. I'm able to show up with more of this Line 6 role model energy of like, here's been my complete experience with this. Here's how I know this works, because I have this experience and I learned this lesson and I went through this experience, right? So the decision was made to pause it, but it wasn't that simple. There were so many fears that came up along the way. And I'm going to share them with you because, I mean, we're all human. We all have fears, and I'm sure you can relate to them too. And I also want to share what I do when I notice these fears in myself, because, well, there's a few things I want to say. Fear is not always a bad thing. Fear is not always the sign that we should stop doing something, right? Like, so I could have interpreted this situation of like, oh, I'm scared of pausing this launch for X, Y, and Z reasons. So that must mean I shouldn't pause it. That must mean I need to keep going. And sometimes that is true. Sometimes when we're afraid of something, it's a sign that we shouldn't do it. But more often than not, I found that when we're afraid of something, it's what we actually want to do. And we're either afraid of what people will think, we're afraid we're going to fail, we're afraid because we're going to be uncomfortable and it's outside of our comfort zone. It's something we've never done before. And that's not a bad thing, right? I'm here to continuously grow and evolve and stretch myself. So if that's the case, that means I'm going to be afraid a lot, because I'm always going to be stretching outside of my comfort zone. I'm always going to be facing things I've never done before. So fear is not a bad thing. It's just learning how to look at the fear, how to understand the fear, how to navigate the fear, how to walk with the fear. And so some of the fears that came up for me with this is that I'm going to be judged. People are going to judge me. I'm going to be seen as someone who is inconsistent in their business. I'm going to be seen as flighty. I'm going to be thought of as unprofessional, or people are going to know that my business isn't completely solid. I'm going to lose credibility. All of these thoughts that people are going to say, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing, or she doesn't have it all figured out. I don't trust her anymore. I'm going to stop following her. I'm never going to hire her. I just lost respect for her, right? And at first, I wasn't aware of these fears. At first, when I thought about pausing the launch, I just felt scared. And so when I feel scared, I grab my journal and I say, okay, Ashley, what are you afraid of? What are you actually thinking right now? What's going on beneath the surface? And when I started digging into it, that's when these fears actually came up. So when the fears came up, it's great because now I can actually look at them. And the first way that I look at these fears is asking, like, is it true? Like, is it true that I'm going to be judged as inconsistent, flighty, unprofessional, whatever? Like, well, possibly, but I don't actually know, right? It's not like people are actually saying to my face, like, now you're unprofessional. It's me projecting onto them that I think that's what they're going to say. So that's one thing. The other way that I look at this is when I have these thoughts of people are going to say this about me or people are going to think this about me, I know that just means that I'm thinking that about myself. These fears of judgment are actually just me judging myself. And so I get to flip the question and say, okay, Ashley, do you think you are inconsistent? Well, actually, a little bit I do, because I started this thing and now I'm stopping this thing. Can you be okay with that? Can you accept that you've been a little bit inconsistent? And when I ask myself, yeah, I can accept that because I am being inconsistent because that this decision that I'm making is actually more aligned for me. So when I believe that this is the best decision because it's aligned for me, it doesn't matter if I'm inconsistent, which then means if there are people out there who think I'm inconsistent, I don't actually care because I may be inconsistent, but I'm actually more aligned. And that is my top priority. Do I actually think that I'm unprofessional? No, not at all. So that's not a fear. I can just drop that one. Do I feel like I don't know what I'm doing? A little bit, maybe like 20 or 30% of me feels like I don't know what I'm doing. But the majority of me actually feels like I do know what I'm doing. I do know what I feel is best for me. I do know that I could continue launching this program if I wanted, and it would be fantastic. I do trust myself and know that I know how to build a business. I do know how to launch an offer. So I do know what I'm doing. Okay, next question. Do I not trust myself? Right? Because the original fear was people don't trust me. So do I not trust myself? Oh, maybe a little bit. Why don't I trust myself? What is it that I don't trust in myself? Is it that I don't trust that when I get an idea, I can't tell if it's a splenic hit or my undefined head center? That's something to look into. Do I not trust myself to catch myself when I'm out of alignment? Which means I would just continue acting out of alignment because that was my past experience. I was acting completely out of alignment for like 35 years of my life and I got so burnt out. So what do I not trust about myself? And really looking into that and seeing what's there and starting to rebuild that trust in whatever way that needs to look like. There was another fear that people aren't going to hire me, that they're going to lose respect for me. Well, would I hire me? Would I respect me? If there were another person who decided to stop their launch because it was misaligned for them, would I lose respect for them? No. Okay, so that means I haven't lost respect for myself for this. And would I hire myself? This is actually a really, really powerful question to ask yourself. Would you hire you? And I've been thinking about this a lot actually over the past few months, and I would hire me. I would hire me to coach myself one-on-one. I would join this course on energetics because I believe I know what I'm talking about. I believe that the content that I'm sharing in this course has the power to change your life if you actually do the work. I fully, fully believe that. Is there any part of me that wouldn't hire me? Yeah, there's like a 20% there that wouldn't. So what is that about? It's about the identity piece, the leadership piece. Am I being the best version of myself? Am I leading myself in a way that is full of confidence and power and conviction? Because that's the type of woman that I want to hire. I want someone who's going to stretch me when I'm in their energy, who makes me feel more empowered, who makes me feel like expanded. And it almost feels like more confidence, right? So if that's who I want to hire, then I need to be that woman myself so that my clients will hire me. Does that make sense? So this is the process that I go through anytime I have these fears that come up. First, I just look at them from a purely like scientific approach of like, is that true? Because a lot of times nobody's actually telling me these things. It's just all in my own mind. And so when it's in my own mind, I have to flip the script and look at it myself, right? Do I think I'm inconsistent? Do I think I'm unprofessional? Do I feel like I don't know what I'm doing? And when I can do that, I'm actually doing the work. I'm actually changing the story and I'm actually eliminating these fears so that they no longer have power over me. And when I can get to that space and I feel so, I have such clean energy around this decision that I've made to pause this launch, then there's no more fear. There's no more anxiety. There's no more funky energy there. And I get to be proud of myself for the decision that I've made. And I get to feel so confident in it. And I get to shift my energy elsewhere in my business, which is what I've done now, shifting it to filling my one-on-one coaching, which feels so freaking good. And I'm so excited for the women who are coming into my world. So this wraps up this episode. I would love to hear your feedback on this. If you enjoy this style of podcast where I'm sharing my own stories with you and taking you a little bit behind the scenes, or if you prefer more of the teaching style podcast that I've been doing previously, I would love for you to send me a DM on Instagram and let me know your thoughts and feelings about this. It would really, really help me. And I love this style of podcast, so it's not going anywhere. But if you prefer the teaching style, we can keep that as well. So I will see you again next week with another episode. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will talk to you very soon.